dear listeners. How are you all? I hope you are doing your best to serve your duties with utmost love and honesty. And I hope that we are going to be successful, right? With God's grace. So let's start the next part of our journey in the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa Dev, Love Transcendental. We have seen that when Sri Ramakrishna embarked on any course of sadhana, it was with such one pointed zeal that everything but the things necessary to the sadhana of the moment was disregarded. When the desire to practice the Madhura Bhava came to him, he asked and obtained from Mathur a complete outfit of woman's clothing. Then began his life as a gopi of Vrindavan, mad with love for Krishna. His every utterance and movement bespoke the intensity of his feelings, his grief at separation from Krishna, and his desire to meet his beloved. From observation of his actions at this period, some idea could be gained of the throes of the gopis when separated from their Lord. He spent 6 months in this state, at no time lapsing from the part he had assumed. The milkmaids of Vrindavan used to worship Katyayani, the preceding deity, and beg the boon of Sri Krishna as husband. Sri Ramakrishna too at this time considered himself the handmaiden of the Divine Mother, but more frequently he served Radha and Krishna in this way. During this period, Sri Ramakrishna lived now and then with the women of Mathur's family in Calcutta. They felt no constraint in his company, for they looked upon him as one of themselves. Every year, Mathur used to invite him to his house during the Durga Puja festival. The following account of one year will show how remarkably Sri Ramakrishna adapted himself to the ways and manners of women during this period. As usual, Mathur made arrangements on a grand scale for the festival. Sri Ramakrishna's presence added a wonderful solemnity to the whole occasion. Mathur and his wife were overjoyed at having this rare opportunity of worshipping the Mother of the universe. The first day's worship was over and preparations were made for the evening service, but an unexpected difficulty arose. Sri Ramakrishna, dressed in a silk cloth and looking exactly like a woman, was in one of his moods of absorption as an eternal attendant or companion of the mother. Mathur's wife could not leave him alone in this trance state to attend the evening service. For only a few days previously, while he was in such a mood, he had fallen on a pan of fire, burning himself badly. She was in a dilemma when an idea came to her. In haste, she brought her valuable ornaments and began to adorn Sri Ramakrishna with them, saying to him all the time, "It is the time for the waving of lights. Won't you come and fan the mother?" The words had their desired effect upon him. He partially recovered consciousness and, in that half awakened mood, joyously accompanied her to the hall of worship. The ceremony began forthwith. Sri Ramakrishna, surrounded by the women, began to fan the goddess with a kori at one end of the hall were the women, while at the other end stood Mathur with the men. Suddenly, Mathur caught sight of a very respectable strange woman standing by the side of his wife, waving a kuri to the Divine Mother. He looked at her again and again, but did not recognize her. He concluded it must be some friend of his wife. When the service was over and the women were gone, Mathur asked his life about the stranger, as I think it is a wife. This word is wife. So let's reread this line. Mathur asked his wife about the stranger. He was agreeably surprised to hear who she was and said, "Well, it is impossible to recognize father even in small things unless he chooses to betray his identity." Hriday too used to say even his nearest relatives could not pick out Sri Ramakrishna in a group of women. One day, Mathur Babu took me into the women's quarters of his home and asked me to point out my uncle. Though I had been living with him for so many years, I did not recognize him at once. He further said, at Dakshineshwar, my uncle used to go to the garden every morning with a flower basket in his hand and collect flowers for offering. We observed that he always advanced his left leg first in the manner of woman. The Vairavi too used to say that at the time of his plucking flowers, she often mistook him for Sri Radha. After praying to the Divine Mother for the boon of realization of Sri Krishna as his beloved, Sri Ramakrishna devoted all his energies to prayer at the feet of Sri Krishna and Sri Radha. He longed for the company of Sri Krishna passionately. The pain of separation from his beloved was unbearable. Day after day, month after month, he spent in fervent expectancy of the vision of Sri Krishna. Nothing could diminish that fervor. He forgot food and drink and spent the whole day in bitter wailing. The eager expectation gradually turned into mad frenzy. The burning sensation all over his body, which he had experienced twice before, reappeared. Minute drops of blood began to ooze from pores of his skin. At times, the joints of his body seemed to be loosened. Owing to the intensity of his anguish, his sense would stop functioning and he looked like a corpse. The world has seldom seen such intense zeal. As already said, Sri Radha's love for Sri Krishna was unparalleled even among the wonderfully selfless milkmaids of Vrindavan. So, tradition says that it is impossible for one to be blessed with a vision of Sri Krishna unless one first obtains the grace of Sri Radha, whose pure love has forever enthralled Sri Krishna. Sri Ramakrishna now appreciated the value of this proprietary worship of Sri Radha and began to pray to her with single minded devotion. Within a short time, Radha revealed herself to him. This time also, he felt the figure vanish into his own body. The master used to say, "It is impossible to describe the heavenly beauty and sweetness of Radha. Her very appearance showed that she had completely forgotten all personal considerations in her passionate attachment to Sri Krishna. Her complexion was light yellow. After this vision, Sri Ramakrishna began to feel himself to be Radha. It was his constant meditation on her character that obliterated his own personality and transformed him into another Radha. Now was fully manifested in him that supreme passion and attachment which characterized her. He was the very picture of Mahabhava. The Brahmani and the learned devotees like Vaishnavacharan were amazed at this and found it to be identical with the unique state of Radha described in the Puranas and of Sri Chaitanya hundreds of years later. The master, referring to this period of his Sadhana said, the manifestation in the same individual of 19 different kinds of emotion for God is designated in the books on bhakti as Mahabhava. An ordinary man takes a whole lifetime to express even a single one of this. But in this body, meaning himself, there has been a perfect manifestation of all 19. So, my dear friends, today we are stopping here. We will return back to the next part of this journey in the next week. So, till then, be happy, be jolly, and keep praying. Shubhamastu.